Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, how you doing? Welcome into the program. So today on the show, we have, of course, our resident cybersecurity expert, Mr. Scott Schober. He'll be joining us here in just a moment to talk all about the latest news and events that have been happening with, I should say, in the realm of cybersecurity. That includes recent malware, hacking, and of course, through all these different topic stories and, current events that we talk about, we of course tried to impart how maybe you can protect yourself just a little bit from these things, because some people, don't get me wrong, sometimes you're just you are the target of an entire country and you might get hacked. But for everyone out there, there are simple tips that you can of course follow to make sure that you aren't one of these unfortunate people who loses their bank account, loses their social media, loses so much. And actually I have one to relate to Scott Schober when we bring him on, actually with ComputerAmerica.com. I don't think anyone noticed because it kind of happened a little bit behind the scenes, but I had my own compromised account with the show here, and I would love to talk to Scott Schober about that for the first time here on the show. So everyone, sit back, relax. Here we go. Hopefully you're doing well today, and of course, ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything: past shows, future shows, podcasts. If you can't catch us live on IRN, then you can, of course, listen to the podcast anytime you'd like. There's also a video portion that you can check out there. And hey, the website has a new skin on it. While I was updating some credentials and updating plugins and all that good stuff, I thought, hey, why not? Why not give the site a little bit of a facelift? So you can check all that out, computeramerica.com. Find us on social media. That's the best place to keep up to date. And of course, if you can of course find the links to everything that we talk about here on the program at the show, in the show notes after the show. Say that 3 times fast. But you can also head on over to scottschober.com directly to see everything that he works on and what he does. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on the man, the myth, the legend. And once again, he is a long-term Computer America contributor. And, he of course works with Berkeley Varitronics systems where they protect wireless signals and Wi-Fi networks. So Scott, how you doing? Welcome back onto the show.
Yeah, great to be with you there, Ben. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to a nice chat today.
Yeah, looking forward to it. A lot going on here and, of course, all around the world. But before we get into that, how you doing? How you been?
I've been doing very well. Yeah, keeping safe with all the COVID challenges, of course, and being careful there, but busier than ever in the world of cybersecurity between speaking at a bunch of events. I have a bunch coming up, doing lots of interviews. In fact, I have an interview that was actually supposed to, they were trying to get me to come on right now, actually at 4:00. And I'm like, no, I already have a commitment. Sorry. So I'm going to do it after this show. I'll jump off this and jump onto another one. But lots of stuff happening, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time, and definitely appreciate it. And I think one of the first things that I have to bring up, because I unfortunately did not have the pleasure, I know that Iowa has this not really weird, but there's a little tech scene that, we had a computer manufacturer from there who came on the show to talk about it, that, of all places, Iowa, which you think is really rural agriculture based kind of economy, they actually have a little Silicon Valley, starting to pop up there. Like they've worked on building out their infrastructure for small, medium businesses. And, it looks like you had the pleasure of speaking at, I'll go ahead and let you say it, September 10th. What happened?
Yeah, I was invited to go to CornCon, which sounded kind of strange to me. And I thought at first, maybe, is this a joke? And no, this is a serious event that they've held year after year. I think this was the 7th year. And it's kind of a convergence of bringing together cybersecurity professionals, a lot of big name companies there, and a lot of the hacking community. And it was interesting. They even brought in all the local high schoolers in there also. So they were learning and doing all kinds of hackathons and different things to learn, and had a really fun time there. And I got to present. I talked all about skimmers for about an hour or so, and dissected them and educated everyone on ATM skimmers, Bluetooth skimmers, as well as for gas pumps. So just had a wonderful time. And then afterward, I did a book signing. So everybody got a copy of my book signed, and I got to speak to them. And again, it was kind of cool because there was a lot of high school seniors that came through asking millions of questions about cybersecurity and as a career, what's it like being a writer? What do you do in your business? So I got to spend some really cool time with some younger ones, and I take it near and dear to heart because I have two kids, a daughter and a son that are both in high school. So it's kind of exciting when I could speak to kids in Iowa and kind of contrast that to New Jersey. So certainly fun. But to your point, yeah, it's kind of there is some, a little bit of a hotbed there for tech. It's not just all farms and corn. It's right near John Deere, of course. Their headquarters is not too far from there. So I was surprised how much technology is out in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's. I'm sure that it's a nice mixture of, just lower cost of living. I'm sure that everyone would love to be out there in California and, right next to a lot of the partners that they work with. But hey, cost of living and the, and all the advances that have happened with telecommuting and, just being able to work, from another state. I know that that Iowa is actually huge, not huge, but building up their industry as much as North Texas, as much as, Colorado and places like that. It's happening all over the country, which is just what you want to see. More people and more states being more tech friendly for sure.
Yeah, I think a big part of things too, in the long haul, this past almost 2 years now with COVID, it doesn't require people to be in their offices. With a lot more remote workers, people are being spread out. They're returning to family, to their roots, to the country, wherever it is. As long as they have a good high-speed internet connection, guess what? They can get a lot of things accomplished. I mean, even myself, if I have to work remotely, if I have to do interviews, if I have to do whatever, I have a summer house that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but I upgraded my internet, so I've got, good speed, solid, reliable internet there, and allows me to work there if I want to, which is great.
Yeah, it's and of course that's great and very cool that you were able to speak out there at CornCon, and honestly seeing some of the gear that they had out there, of course it looks like a fun time. And hey, a lot of these sponsors I've seen, a lot of these guest speakers I've seen, and hey, it sounds like a really, really fun time. So good to see events like that starting to pop back up here and there. So there you have it. And so I think we'll talk about your discussing the future ransomware panel a little bit towards the end of the show. But sure. I wanted to get into some of these, some of the topics that you have here. Besides, so I have a number of stories, you have a number of stories, and you have some very, very good ones. I think a lot of these we did not actually cover on the show, though what we have covered on the show, and I think we'll start here with Apple, if you don't mind. With Apple, there was, I think it was with iOS update 14, I think, or maybe it was 13, where they weren't, actually they did ban apps from accessing private user data, and if they did, then they had to explicitly ask the end user for permission to use the data. And then, of course, it showed that this app is tracking your location, it's requesting information from this. Essentially, it didn't really block, and it did block in some cases, but didn't really block it. More just made end users aware of the tracking that was happening. So it is anti in the fact that it alerts you when whenever an application tries to get that information. And then, of course, a lot of users, Scott, I'm sure that you yourself have done it. You just hit deny. Of course, I don't want you tracking, but I still want to use your app. I just don't want you to track me. Now, you have this article here that we did not cover, which is that there seems to be a workaround, and that's good or maybe not good.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of cool. To your point there, in this article, it says that about 96% of U.S. iPhone users after the release, they kind of adopted this and thought, hey, this is great. I'm going to be private, this and that. But I guess reality is that just because you ask an app, a third-party app, this is a Facebook or whoever, to respect your privacy and that you don't get tracked, they don't listen. And that's kind of scary, because it goes against everything that Apple really worked toward to build up a secure following and base and users that will continue to grow with it. And it goes right against it in their face, in a sense. I think that's kind of concerning. And and this article kind of delves into it a little bit and shares some of the information. And now, again, it's not necessarily a slam against Apple, because I guess they had good intent in what they're trying to do there. It's just that these companies find little workarounds, and that's part of the ultimate problem there.
Yeah, and there's always going to be this game of cat and mouse that we talk about with cybersecurity, that whenever you throw up a wall, there's going to be someone who is looking to circumvent, get by that wall. And, you, as the attacker, you have a lot more freedom to, kind of work with than if you're the defender, because you can't defend everything all the time forever. Information still has to flow one way or another. And hey, getting through that in some form is going to happen. I feel like, Scott, that we've talked about Cambridge Analytica kind of comes to mind. I know that's Facebook in particular, but there's also the LinkedIn one that happened a couple months ago. A lot of that was like scraping. A lot of that was integrating with not the IP stuff, the APIs. A lot of that was integrating with APIs. Like, Scott, like a lot of this information that's being shared, it's not really that. It's not that it's not bad. It's just that this is kind of by design, isn't it? Like, these devices
absolutely.
And these applications are meant to share your data.
Yeah, and they do that so well. And again, a lot of times, it's your metadata, as we've talked about in your past, the data about data it's sharing. So it's not going to necessarily say Scott Schober, but as you dig down to these different data points, it is usually pretty specific to what iOS you're using, what particular iPhone you're using, what carrier are you using. In the particular case, that the one that I guess caught my eye when I originally read through this article here was Subway Surfers. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I remember approving that game when my son downloaded it. So it's on his iPhone, which is connected to my iPhone, which is connected to all my family's iPhones. And they're collecting 29 data points about the user's phone, even though we denied for them to allow us to track it. Yet they're collecting data points about us. And so therefore, it tells you the weakness in the entire ecosystem and how that could be used against us. Yeah, it's something I got to address tonight, actually.
Well, and really, thinking about this, of course, Apple has long been championed as one of those companies that values their customers' privacy, or, so they've said, and so they've demonstrated in a couple of different instances. But keep that in mind, that this is one of the more privacy conscious companies. And then we have an article coming up, Scott. I don't know if you saw the hardware unveiling of Amazon, where they have the new robot and the new drone that are both going to be patrolling people's houses if Amazon, kind of believes that's what their customers want, and if they purchase them and put them there. But yeah, I mean, it seems a little difficult to put that back in Pandora's box now that we've kind of opened it. And I mean, this was the nature of the internet, was to share, to stream data to and from. Like, I feel like this isn't going to get better. It's, trying to put Band-Aids all over this. Apple's trying it. I'm sure Google and Android and, a lot of other companies are trying to do this, but it's not going to be easy to make these things secure, is it?
No, it is not. And I did check out a little bit that Amazon robot, which is kind of cool, kind of scary. A lot of these big tech companies are innovating, and they're coming out with new devices and things quicker than people can actually even do security checks and audits on them to verify that they can't be hacked or can't have the vulnerabilities exploited. Unfortunately, that small percentage of the population that buys, the early adopters to apps, technology, innovation, they're the ones that that buy into it, and unfortunately, their information may be compromised before they even realize it. So it's something that I think we need to slow down a little bit and just assess and ask ourselves the tough questions. Can these devices be compromised? The answer is always yes. How do we reinforce it and protect the data, the personal information better before it's in the customer's hands and before it gets out there too much? And I think that would greatly help. I did an interview the other night just talking even about Apple versus Samsung phones. And one of the big reveals, things that come out of the conversation, is that Samsung creates great stuff and they innovate and get technology out there. Apple's a little bit late to the game, but they take their time and get the security right most of the time. Doesn't mean all the time, but most of the time. And that's true. I think even with this story here, there's going to be things. And I even said, if you try to find a workaround, a backdoor to iOS and this security tracking, they're going to ban you. So if these companies, these app companies that are really selling a lot of apps, and that's the revenue from the App Store, at least that side of it, they're going to get banned if they're not careful here. So they really got to follow the rules and play fair, or eventually they're going to lose a big percentage of their market share.
And I'm sure that you have that you follow this as closely as I do, I'm sure, with Apple and all of the zero-day vulnerabilities. I got to say, over the past 2 months in particular, I don't know what this is, and this is just, I can't point to all of the individual articles. I know that there have been many 0 days for Apple ever since the NSO organization, that whole thing happened. I don't know if it's driving headlines and it's driving clicks and eyeballs, and that's why it's getting more attention. But Scott, have you noticed an uptick in the amount of vulnerabilities that are at least being reported on when it comes to iOS? Because before, I guess, like, whatever security researchers did, they do a great job. They do an important job. It's a very boring job, to write the definitions for for your anti-malware stuff. But Scott, it seems like iOS in particular has gotten a lot more of the limelight the past month or two when it comes to zero-day vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And maybe it's a couple different reasons. I mean, you've got Apple recently launching the iPhone 13 Pro. The commercials are out. You've got an uptick with now people migrating over to the 5G network. So that's a big reason for people to finally say, hey, I've been waiting 2-3 years. I don't need a new phone. Ooh, there's a new iPhone. It works better with 5G. Let me go to that. Better camera, so on and so forth. So for some of those reasons, I think people are doing it. And if you also look at just even the market share, global market share, I mean, Apple's 49% of the market share now. Right. It used to be number 2. Actually, it dropped down to number 3. You've got Samsung as the dominant player still, with more than 50%. But now you've got Xiaomi, if I'm pronouncing it right, a Chinese manufacturer. Xiaomi, I think, is a phone manufacturer that's starting to chip away at Apple's market base now for the lower cost phones. The higher cost phones, Apple's still dominant there, but now they've got Chinese companies moving in there, and the likes of, we used to hear about Motorola and Nokia, many other phone companies. We don't hear about them anymore. So you've got really dominant Samsung, and you got this Chinese company Xiaomi, and you've got Apple number 3 now. And then down the list, a lot of the other companies are, LG and others that are kind of getting out of the business or changing. So people realize there can only be a couple big players. Right. And I think that's getting a lot of attention. And Apple, again, the largest company in the world, they're in the spotlight again and again and again as they're eroding their market, getting chipped away by these Chinese competitors. It's going to be a tough one for them.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for putting your own context to that. So going back to your point you made just a minute ago about, securing these devices, it's never going to be 100% guaranteed. I have 2 stories that I wanted to talk about with new hardware, and I wanted your, kind of your reaction to this before we get back to some other big hacking events and things like that. But just so you know, let's see, I'll send these to you in the chat, but I think the first one's going to be this one here about, well, Amazon. And of course, it's an article from The Verge. And let's see, let's pull that up real quick. And let's see, chats would be, oh my God, you think I know how to do this? There we go.
That's all right. I've got it here, the Astro.
Yeah, no, you're all good. So Amazon's Astro, unfortunately, I was out at a doctor's appointment the other day, so I wasn't able to catch it. But as I understand, a lot of this was kind of hinted at and leaked beforehand. The Astro is completely new to me, but Amazon Astro, that it's they promise, and I guess the name itself kind of invokes, I think Astro was the dog of the Jetsons, if I'm not mistaken.
It was. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm sure that they're invoking something of a futuristic dog-like companion, and yeah, it's essentially a tablet on wheels with a microphone and a camera, and they're promising to do what all of their other Amazon devices can do. Much like their Ring doorbells that can use facial recognition to determine who came into your house or who's there or something like that. Voice recognition, it promises that as well. Yeah, and let's just go ahead and lump the drone, the home drone. It's like a little USB thumb drive, or at least an old school one that was super big back in the day, on 4 little propellers, and it will be able to fly around and monitor your home with a camera. Scott, Amazon is using, obviously, their users as beta testers, but do you think that these products are consumer ready? Because this seems a little rushed.
Yeah, I can understand the robot a little bit, the Astro, because what are they doing there? I guess they're kind of, I don't want to say kludging. That's the wrong way. Don't take offense, Amazon, but they're basically taking Alexa, they're mating it with a camera. So you've got a voice assistant, you've got a camera and a microphone on wheels that can move around your house and
they're
provide
like
some level of companion. Yeah, it's a little strange. Whereas the other one, the flying, I don't know what you call it exactly, the flying security doorbell drone. Yeah. It just seems pretty fakakta that you have to fly around the house to look to see if things are secure. The chances for failure, but even worse, the chances that there's going to be vulnerabilities to exploit to get into some of these devices. For security researchers, it's great because they're going to have a lot of fun with this. And you could imagine somebody flying into the bathroom there, or somebody taking a shower and getting into all kinds of trouble, somebody hacking into that. I think it's going to be a disaster. But I'm just surprised that there's I guess they've gone and done the market research. So there's a need for these type of devices, and to what level. Of course, I'm saying that laughing, and I'm probably one of the first people that'll buy it to play with it, among many other gadgeteers out there that love to buy this stuff. But it just seems like it does open the door up to privacy issues, security issues, vulnerabilities. Going to be a mess.
Now, when you say, and I'm kind of chuckling at the fact that you said that, they've done market research to show that people want this. Judging by last year's Amazon hardware event, where they had like a Bluetooth connected clock and stuff like that, I mean, yeah, I feel like they don't exactly I really feel like they don't have a market for this. They're just trying to make headlines once again and get people kind of comfortable with the idea, because at $1,000 for the rollable camera on wheels that is like a little display tablet that's probably much slower. Yeah, I don't see many people, like, at least Aibo look cute, I guess. I mean, this doesn't look bad, but it looks kind of like something someone would assemble in their garage. It's pretty simplistic. So $1,000 for what is essentially an Amazon, and I'm trying to avoid using using the name, an Amazon device on wheels. It's I think this is going to be more of a security nightmare than anything useful at the moment. I mean, there might be uses for this. I don't know. Scott, I feel like with really everyone spending more time at home, having more home security devices seems a little weird, I guess. I don't know.
I agree. And it almost borderlines insecurity when you add gadgets to it and features if it's not proven out, which I'm always nervous. Now, my initial thought was, and I could be wrong, I look at a company and admire them to some extent. Wise. They've got over 30 devices that they've launched. A lot of them are geared towards security with cameras and doorbells and everything under the sun. Most of them are so low cost that it kind of scares you to death. When you can buy a doorbell-like camera that you can connect into your iPhone, I think I bought one, I think it was $24. I was one of the early adopters to test it out. I was blown away for that low cost. So I said, geez, I'll buy a couple of them, give them to gifts for friends and other things, and test them out and play with them. They have a lot of products like that, and they also provide monitoring services. Now, Amazon's play, in my opinion here, to your point, yeah, they're probably trying to get a little bit more attention in the spotlight in the media. They've got money to burn, so they can do that.
Of course.
And they've done a pretty good job with that in a lot of different ways. But it's probably a low-cost risk to develop some consumer devices that not only could it be sold on Amazon, obviously, and generate more revenue for them, but it also puts the brand out there to tell people, hey, we don't just deliver packages on your front doorsteps so you can't get in your house anymore. We have a whole bunch of other things that we're doing. And you look at their, you look at their server side, their data centers. Mm-hmm. Now you're starting to see products. You look at their
grocery stores,
their driving, logistics, everything. Yeah, grocery. I mean, they are starting to become a very large force that's tough to battle, and it's going to maybe be challenging for other big tech companies where a lot of this crisscrosses now, especially at the price point.
That certainly gets into a whole conversation that's probably not today, but I've had on the show before about antitrust and the fact that if Bell Corporation was broken up in the 80s, that was for a lot less than what Google, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft are currently kind of sitting on. So that's something that will probably be handled in the courts, but. Man, it seems like it's certainly getting to a head. One last, and I guess kind of the point that the author, and this is again kind of the author's point with this, is that Astro isn't a home robot; it's a camera on wheels, and that's what Amazon wants. They're trying to get people adjusted to the idea of cameras being in their home constantly. And Scott, I would also kind of assert that. They already have. I mean, let's face it, we all carry one around in our pocket. Like how many, so many law enforcement, and actually I have a great, especially since your line of work and what you do, I wanted your opinion on this one as well. You know what, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. There was a Supreme Court case that was settled like a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really apologize that I can't recall, who it was off the top of my head, but the headline didn't make as big of a splash as I think it should have. It was a situation where, once again, there was a murder, and the perpetrator was caught because they had their phone in their pocket. And law enforcement said, hey, well, and I shouldn't say that because people may have Google devices. So they asked Google, who operates, all the different IP addresses and, is able to track people using geofencing and geotagging. And of course, Amazon devices, or not Amazon, Android devices. Law enforcement asked Google, without a subpoena or without a warrant, give us all of the phones that have connected to any of these Wi-Fi signals or any of these signals around this property, and they gave a geofence of like a quarter mile, whatever it is, over this 3-day period. And they were able to identify one person who was there before, who was a person of interest, and they were able to track his location based on the information that Google gave them, and then they were able to eventually find him guilty in court over it. Essentially, Google, gave law enforcement the information they needed just by him owning his cell phone and the fact that it was on. They were able to lock him up for the murder that he committed. Now, of course, murderers should be arrested. That should go without saying. But Scott, wireless technology being used like that in law enforcement, I mean, again, your customers are law enforcement. I mean, that doesn't seem unusual, but that is just kind of the future that we're living in. If you have a phone, you are tracked regardless of kind of what you do. Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, and I wrote a fair amount about this, especially I think it was the case was San Bernardino, the iPhone that goes back some time ago, if you remember that one there.
The terrorist thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously everybody has their opinion and they have the right to have their opinion. To me, if somebody is a hard and fast criminal and there is enough evidence there that this could kind of seal it, to me, at some point, you have to kind of cave and work with law enforcement. And in my research, I found out Apple works with law enforcement all the time, as well as other big tech companies. More than ever, that makes the press. We never hear about it. Yet these things happen almost on a daily basis to a point. Now, I think Apple in particular is a little guilty of this. With some of the newer phones, especially the newer phones, and then we talked in the past about end-to-end encryption, both software, but they also have hardware, and they've got a secure enclave inside there. So they've got security on both sides, software, hardware, that's encrypted. And Apple themselves kind of is like, hey, we can't unlock this in many cases. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it's very difficult to, and they can basically turn their head and say, sorry, guys, that's privacy and this and that. So it's getting harder and harder for big tech companies to cave to law enforcement's demands. But they do traditionally work very closely, all the phone manufacturers and tech companies with law enforcement. But it's expensive, it's painful, it's time consuming. So I could see why they try to push back where they can and just blame it on security and encryption and things. And it is getting harder and harder to do it. And there's a lot of third-party companies that will now get in place, and they'll actually carefully remove or literally wire to the top of certain integrated circuits and pull out the information now, which is pretty scary, besides just doing a physical firmware dump on these devices. So there's all different ways of doing it, and it takes some time and money. If you got 50 grand, 100 grand, you could pretty much unlock a phone with the right resources these days.
Right. Yeah. And that's really, kind of the importance around. Oddly enough, like Israel has a very big cybersecurity, I guess, kind of industry where they have a lot of people that will hack into iPhones. They will also have the NSO group that will, provide you malware, for state organizations, things like that. I remember the San Bernardino thing. I completely believe Apple when they say that they can't have access to people's phones, but a whole issue that we I don't think we talked about last month, Scott, where Apple was going to search people's phones, or at least, kind of in a weird cryptographic way, search people's phones for child pornography images, things like that.
Appropriate images and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And Apple does not historically have access to your phone, but they do have access to their own Apple cloud system. So if police show up with a warrant, they will hand over any and all information that you upload to the Apple cloud, because as soon as you hit that transfer button, Apple owns it. It's on their servers. Apple has every right to turn it over. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one thing that's very powerful, in fact, I just started to initial conversations with the company. They developed some pretty advanced apps that work either in the Android world or in the Apple iOS world. And what it allows you to do, in particular case with Apple, if you have an Apple ID, so anybody in the Apple ecosystem typically has an Apple ID if they're using it for the radio, the TV streaming, this or that, or buying things, whatever the case may be. So all you need to do is give this company the Apple ID of somebody's particular phone. If you're the parent, for example, and your child's under 18 years of age, and you purchase the phone for your child and you pay the bill, and their Apple ID, you can, with that Apple ID, now get all the information, access to all the information on their iPhone. And when I say all the information, I'm talking photos, text, content, where they surfed, phone calls, you name it. You basically have all these spying privileges as a legal guardian and parent, and you don't have to go to law enforcement or get a judge's order or anything like that. Now, you could take that context the next step and say, well, what's preventing me, if I know somebody's Apple ID, if it's a cheating spouse or boyfriend or wacko or anything else that wants to spy on somebody, man, that's the perfect app for doing it. And yeah, you're breaking the law, but look how much access to information you could suddenly start to get. And it's subscription based, and it's $50-$60 a month. So there's some cost to it, obviously, but wow, how powerful some of those things are out there these days. And again, why? Because we're all so stuck on our iPhones and our Android devices and Samsungs and stuff. So
It certainly, and I think the whole CSAM scanning that they were going to do, essentially the whole process you were talking about with, kind of parent-child registration of phones and through certain carriers, like that's the only time that those CSAM protections would be enforced would be when the child's phone, was either sent or receiving sends or receives pictures of that nature, so on and so forth. There were barriers put in place, and those barriers exist. I know it's really impressive that a third-party company is, picking up on that and providing those services. Obviously, protection can protection can very quickly go to surveillance. We've always been fans of companies that say that they promote the conversation. Of course, give the tools, but then obviously you have the conversation after. You don't just do it surreptitiously. What I was talking about and that's Apple, that whole thing, definitely talked about that on the show before. What I was talking about with Google, and I can send you this as well if you want to read this on kind of your own time, but this...
Yeah, please.
I'll include this in the show notes. It's Harvard Law Review, and they're talking about Geofence warrants, which is what they're doing. So some of these you need warrants to do. Some of them are without warrants, and that's really kind of the problem that I had. Scott, I think most sane people would be on the same page. If law enforcement has shown that there's something that they need, they take it to a judge, they get a court order, or they get they get that warrant. There's really no reason law enforcement can't do what law enforcement has to do. They should go by and do it. The moment that there's no warrant to do this, that's when you run into problems. When Google is just handing out information to law enforcement without any kind of warrants, that's a problem. And then, of course, there's this idea of geofence warrants where they are too big of a net. This whole unreasonable search and seizure, Fourth Amendment, that whole can of worms. Scott, asking for, all participants in a quarter-mile radius, that is a really large net to cast, and of course you'll catch something in that net if you throw it out there. So this there's this article, and it's quite the legal mess that's brewing.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting read. Now it's interesting too. It just recently, I think the other day, Cellebrite is a company. You mentioned Israeli companies. Cellebrite is one of the strongest known in the industry, and they provide a lot of the test tools for scraping the information off your phone when you're migrating from Model X to Model Z or whatever. You're getting your new iPhone or your new Samsung or something like that, and all the phone stores. They also have a line of security tools that allow for the forensics guys to go in, and they announced recently an endpoint inspector. I don't know if it's on there. I see it on your screen now there, that you can actually automate, and it allows you to do some pretty cool stuff there if you have data from different things. So it used to be that you'd have to always confiscate and you kind of get a court order, get the guy's phone, and then do the forensics on it and stuff. Now they're able to do it, automate it, and do it remotely because everybody's data is somehow synced to the cloud. So when you start to think of how powerful this can be, and again, it doesn't matter if you're iOS or Android, Windows, Mac OS, whatever, it gives law enforcement pretty much instant access to it. What I think needs to be done is change how long it takes to get a court order. So I think they still should do things legally, and that way it respects people's privacy and everything else. But if they could prove to a judge that there is beyond reasonable doubt that I got to confiscate this phone or access to the data because somebody's life's in danger, that process should go much faster. I've heard of stories, in fact, I've even dealt with some where situations where they had a mobile phone on their person and they needed to quickly direction find it, and they needed Title III authorized equipment for search and rescue, and they couldn't get it to the judge fast enough, and people die. That's a tragedy because the system is so slow. The technology can do amazing things, but if it takes layers of paperwork to get some judge to sign it, most of the time they don't even understand or have the time to understand how this will save someone's life. That process needs to be streamlined and improved so people's lives can be saved and the technology is used where it needs to be used to help people and make a difference.
So and of course, completely agree. And there's even one more little twist I'll throw in here. Not going to follow down this rabbit hole, but this is the Electronic Frontier Foundation and their write-up about a recent the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in California that actually found an opposing ruling of another appellate court. But suffice to say, this gentleman was stupid enough to request and then received child pornography through Gmail and through file attachments. Yeah, he got caught, surprisingly. So Google actually forwarded the they're automatically flagged. No one at Google ever saw the images themselves. They forwarded it to law enforcement for law enforcement to check out. They opened the attachments that Google had sent to them, and then law enforcement identified them, positively said, this is offensive material, arrested the guy, and they have him in jail. Now there's a whole court case going on, Scott, about the fact that when you sign a terms of service with Google, Apple, Microsoft, whatever large company, that does not mean you sign away your right to illegal search and seizure, which is, again, the Fourth Amendment. To have have everything scanned, everything potentially forwarded to law enforcement, just because you hit yes to Google means that, of course, the law enforcement opened up those images that Google sent to them, but Google wasn't supposed to be doing that on behalf of the government anyways. You've been in this industry longer than I have for sure. It's one of those where technology has to catch up to the existing rules on the books, and you're saying it takes too long. There's court cases like this, and of course the Harvard Law Review saying that we just don't know how to apply the laws that we have, and in a lot of cases, they're just not good fits. Like, I think that finding either politicians, people who write legislation, and finding people who are knowledgeable about technology, because Scott, you're an expert. I'm Ben. So, but we're here talking about this, on a monthly basis. I can't expect my legislators to understand this as well as we do here on the show, and yet they have to make up the rules for this. It's a very confusing time for technology, and I feel like it always will be a confusing time for privacy.
Yeah, I agree, and I almost look at it as I don't know if you call it apples to oranges or however you want to relate it, but you're right. If you look at the actual laws in place, they do a lot of good. Some of them need to be modernized, and they don't always work hand in hand with technology. And unfortunately, technology advances so quickly that the laws cannot and probably will not ever keep up with them. Mm-hmm. But it sure is a shame when for all the bad technology does. To me, what always is troublesome when you do have technology and it works for the good and it could make a life-saving difference, and then it's crippled by some stupid law written in 1960 something, and they take the letter of a law, and yet you look at the contrast, a cyber criminal that's using technology to exploit things and steal things and hurt people, and they just disregard all the laws. But other people will focus so much to the letter of the law that they can't use it for good. I guess this turns into a little bit of a political debate, which we both are probably not
not too keen on.
Don't enjoy ever, and I can't stand it. But it's frustrating because anytime those paths cross technology and politics and law, it could just be daunting to work something out. I wish there was some happy medium in between their ground or exceptional clause that things could work out, but
right.
Maybe that's not easier said than done.
I just find them so interesting whenever these big landmark court cases kind of come up that set precedent for lawmakers to kind of look back on and touch. There's a court case somewhere in like Chicago or something like that I believe is still going on. Scott, a gentleman refuses to give the court the password to his encrypted hard drive. And of course, I don't know why it always comes back to child pornography. Law enforcement believes that there's a massive trove of child pornography, and he's like, I'm not going to give up the key. I'm not going to give up the password. And the judge is like, well, you're in contempt of court. You can't do that. So now there's this legal battle going on. It's like, is this gentleman going to be held in jail indefinitely until he dies, until he gives up his password? Or is that, kind of the same thing as just being found guilty without any evidence? It's I'm interested in the legal discussion more so than like the political side, but these are popping up monthly now. It's weird.
Yeah, it is. And to your point, you were asking about it's always child pornography. And that's true. I always hear about these cases. Part of the reason is because it's so profitable. I think another thing, it's so hard to catch people. Mm-hmm. And then in addition, there are so many other parallel vices that work in tandem with child pornography. It's just like oftentimes we'll be contacted to inspect boxes that have a high percentage of mobile phones in it from shipping companies. And I started to finally say, why? Well, who cares if somebody's buying mobile phones? Well, guess what? If there's a higher percentage of them, it's often tied to drug dealers. They buy a lot of burner phones and they have a lot of disposable cash and things. So there's certain patterns that law enforcement can often look to. And certainly child pornography will lead to other types of drug busts and other types of crimes, money laundering, and probably tied in with cryptocurrency and everything else we can imagine under the sun. And I think that that's kind of powerful when you can make those connect the dots kind of thing. It makes a big difference from law enforcement, kind of like a Criminal Minds episode when you kind of watch and see how they can profile. I think they do a good job, law enforcement, with that, with a lot of these type of cases, especially now as you bring into the realm the world of cryptocurrency and the dark web. These are powerful platforms that they could now use to analyze crime and track it down. That's kind of very unorthodox from 5 years ago, even.
Right. Yeah. And just to touch on some other stories here, and we'll get to, I think, one or two more of yours and one of mine here real quick, just to touch base on this. So a while ago, there was this whole cryptocurrency, I think it was WannaCry ransomware. And of course, the origins of that, everyone was kind of pointing the finger at China, Russia, kind of where's it going? And then there were some reports that a rather non-traditional, but has since become a traditional problem of the cryptocurrency world and more like the crypto hacking ransomware was North Korea. And I'm sure a lot of people made the same jokes like, oh my God, they even have computers. That's amazing. But turns out that they have computers, they have connections. And well, Scott, there's this article here from the BBC talking about, the fact that cryptocurrency expert admits aiding North Korea. And they said that Griffith, he attended a summit on cryptocurrency, blockchain, and a conference in North Korea, and helped them launder money. And then, of course, they were, the U.S. Department of Justice has him as jeopardizing the national security of the United States by undermining sanctions. So, of course, laundering money into North Korea. Scott, I just want to bring this up and say, again, North Korea was not my first guess, but you were the one who kind of brought it up to us was, hey, North Korea was, might have ties to this.
Yeah, I think as we learn more, we're going to see more and more of that. It is scary, and how often they use it to launder money. And I think almost all the different research that I've done again and again and again on the dark web and cryptocurrency, they find different ways to launder it. And it's often tied in with countries such as North Korea and other countries that I guess it's not surprising anymore. That's the part that keeps making us wonder what is going on here.
Right. Yep. So, and of course, just wanted to kind of point that out that, it's, this is a big problem that is now reaching, I guess, kind of nation state level. Although, hey, let's face it, it's been there for years. Speaking of which, there's one that you sent me. I did not pick up on this, but I'm very glad that you did. This about a week ago with the FBI held back ransomware decryption key from businesses to run operation targeting hackers. So this is probably a double-sided coin for you, Scott, because as a business owner, I'm sure that you have some feelings. And of course, as someone who works in cybersecurity, I'm sure that you can also appreciate keeping things close to the vest and, trying to catch the true perpetrators instead of just trying to mitigate the damage.
Absolutely. I read this and I sat there scratching my head asking, how could they have done this? But then the other side of the coin, as you say, because there are always two sides to it, they were moving in and they were very close to nailing them. That the irony of it all, because if you remember not too long ago, the website went off, disappeared.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they realized the feds are moving in. We're going to get nailed. Let's disappear for a while. So does that mean somebody inside the FBI or somebody else tipped their hands? I could only speculate. It's going to make for a great book if someday when somebody figures all this stuff out. But they're doing a good job, and I guess they're walking the fine line. FBI doesn't want to give away too much. And if they suddenly went out to, I think it was 1,500 companies or so that were hit with that ransomware, if suddenly they say, hey, we've got the magic decryption key here, everybody, imagine how the cyber criminals would now respond. Most likely this double extort that I think we talked about that a little bit, where they first download all of the data, the personal information from the computer networks and hold that, then they go and encrypt it. They may say suddenly, okay, fine, we're going to extort you, you dummies. You gave them the decryption key. Now we're going to put all that data out there for the public, the highest bidder, and give away intellectual property and this and that, because there were government agencies, there were
highest bidder, or it's like highest bidder, or even just free, just to put it out there.
Give it away to rub your nose in it to prove a point. So I think this one really was interesting, and this explains a lot of. I think myself and many others were very perplexed. What was going on when this story initially broke, and then why did the trail kind of disappear? You're following REvil and all these other groups, and then all of a sudden everything got quiet, and then all of a sudden another wave hits. Why? Well, it's starting to make sense. And then they're also finding a lot of these cybersecurity groups may disband, and they just come up with another name. We're Hello Kitty ransomware group today, or we're this or that. And then you realize, oh, okay. They just shifted around. So they're really good at disguising themselves. And as law enforcement moves in to catch them, they just mix up the game a little bit and try a new alias and keep people guessing.
Yeah, and of course, I think that a lot of these companies that make these universal decryption keys, and a lot of these security companies, especially the ones that can operate on a national or international level to help Kaseya, in particular, they probably have pretty close ties with law enforcement. They probably work with or are customers, or have customers that are law enforcement. So they don't want to step on any toes. Even if they have the keys, they probably didn't want to release and just ruin all of their plans and, kind of get in trouble that way. So, very interesting, kind of turn that, hey, they had the key, but they wanted the people behind it more so than mitigate the damage. I'm sure that they would have loved to have it both ways, but yeah, it's that was a very different take on that, and I had not heard that. So very interesting one. I think we have plenty of time for one more story. Scott, I'll go ahead and let you decide. We have two stories that we didn't cover. Go ahead.
Trying to think of which one would be interesting.
We have either the Port Pass app or the Vice City. Or, I'm sorry, Vice Society. How about
maybe Vice Society, because that kind of throws a little bit of a little different spin on some of the stuff, which is kind of interesting here. Because again, we're talking healthcare here. And this one here was, again, a ransomware gang. They conducted or claims to have conducted a ransomware attack targeting California healthcare provider United Health Centers of San Joaquin. And there's, I think, 20 some community health centers there. So pretty large operation there. And they in turn are a spinoff. This particular ransomware group, Vice Society, is a spinoff of an actual group, Hello Kitty ransomware. I was only joking before, but I wasn't joking in a sense. And that gang there uses a whole bunch of different methods to gain information from their target. And one of the vulnerabilities that they try to exploit is called a print nightmare bug. And that allows them to pull out all kinds of information from the victim's system there, and of course encrypt the files, and then they publish it on these data leak sites or whatever, really just to apply some moderate pressure into people to paying the ransom, that extortion tactic that they're starting to use there. And it's really scary. It's scary what some of these groups are doing and what length they go to hold it. And to some degree, and I think we talked about this a number of months back, a lot of the ransomware groups agreed that they were going to play fair, and they're not going to step over the line to hospitals and healthcare because it affected people's lives. And some ransomware groups just say, I really don't care who dies and what happens or anything else. And there's already been proven cases, I think it was in Europe, people that have died as a result of a ransomware attack holding hostage, a hospital's data so they couldn't retrieve
they had to turn them away.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is wrong. And it tells you that criminals have no ethics and no morals. So we can't trust them.
Much like horrible people who play online video games and stuff like that, it's so easy to, when you don't see someone face to face, to stop thinking about them as people. Either trolls on social media, which I'm sure that we both have to deal with. I mean, it's very easy to disassociate your victim from their humanity, but we're not really there to kind of judge that. But I'm glad that, let's see, were they able to catch them, or were they just encrypting these 20 community health centers in Fresno and they've just been under attack?
I don't think as of yet they caught them, if I recall right. If I'm not
hopefully they
do.
Story. So I wanted to kind of wrap that up real quick because I wanted you to talk about this panel discussion that you have with the future of ransomware, which honestly sounds a little bit like what we talked about today, but I'm sure you will have much better discussion with the Vice President of Product of BioKey. BioKey, met them out at CES a number of times. They're great people. I'm glad that you're able to get them on and their expertise. And of course, the Senior Vice President of Global Channels of Alliances with AppGate, Ms. Tina Gravel and Ms. Kimberly Johnson. So what is this panel discussion that you with the future of ransomware?
Yeah, we're diving into to ransomware, which is a hot topic, nonstop in the headlines. I just did an hour presentation the other day on IEEE TV. I've got a series of those that I'm doing, so it's going to be a similar discussion, but looking a little bit more toward some of the futuristic things. What are the scary things we look forward to in ransomware? Right now, it's encrypting data and extortion. But I like to always think ahead and say, okay, what happens now if somebody, takes over your Tesla?
So Scott, funny that you mentioned that. One article that I didn't bring up today, but I can throw it up there and put it in there. GM's new software hub will update your next electric vehicle like a smartphone. And we didn't talk about that, but very relevant.
Very timely. And those are the things that kind of everybody always asks me, what keeps me up at night? Thinking ahead to the future of possible hacks where somebody could do a man in the middle attack there, and you're trying to innocently update your EV charger, your electric vehicle. And now suddenly you find out that some crazy hacker on the other side of the world is taking it over, and they're trying to hold a ransom, and maybe it's against you, your company, your cryptocurrency, whatever the case. That's what the future is. It's going to get worse. And attacks, I bring out the stat when I present on the topic of ransomware. 2018, the average paid ransom was $5,000. We forwarded to 2021, the average ransomware payout is now $200,000. That is incredible. Do you see why so many people
I'm in the
are
wrong
now
business.
shifting over to ransomware? And now, in fact, there's ransomware as a service, just like software as a service and things like that. They've adopted the similar model where now they can target, sell it as a service, and they take part of the profit. So if they can drive up, and if they could get $200,000 out of each victim, and in some cases, the take will be 80% they'll pay you if you're a bad guy. Mm-hmm. So they'll give you the tools, the technology, the particular strain that doesn't have a decryption tool, and they'll train you how to actually do it. And it becomes as a service model there. That's stinking scary. And it tells you how lucrative. That's why billions upon billions of dollars each and every year are now being brought in as a result of specifically ransomware attacks.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a very, very fun conversation, and kind of scary, a little dystopian because it's all what could be. But I'm sure that you, of all people, could pull, straight from today's examples to show what is possible tomorrow. You have that, and then of course Demystifying the Dark Web. We did a segment like that about 2 years ago. We did an article and a whole show on it. The dark web is not a scary place, but people are afraid of it, and there are things that you should not partake in. So I'm glad that you're demystifying the dark web. That's October 21st Eastern time that you're doing that there. But Scott, thank you for coming on, and I hope that and I hope that whatever interview you have coming up here in a moment goes well as well. And thank you for joining us.
Great, thanks. Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe. All right, everyone, that's about it. Thank you so much. ScottSchober.com. Once again, if you want to check that out, ComputerAmerica.com. We'll have that there. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. Tune in tomorrow. We have more Computer America. Until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.